Hi folks, this is Sarabjit Johar from Fremont, California. This is my weekly vlog covering B2B Enterprise Tech news. This is for week ending May 27th. This week was busy with many tech events and many tech earnings, which are very relevant to data center applications, developer community, AI, you name it. So just B2B Enterprise Tech. On the events side, we had Red Hat Summit, we had Dell Tech World, and we had MS Build. Very busy week. On the earnings side, we had Splunk, we had Nvidia, Palo Alto Networks, Analog Devices, and a few more. With that said, let's get started. On Monday, Dell Tech World started. Let's cover the whole event for 3 days, what happened. Mainly, they reinforced their message. They are working on their multi-cloud platform called Dell Apex. Under that, they had a project called Alpine. The whole idea behind that project is that the storage has to be shared amongst multi-cloud consumption mechanisms. So if you have storage at Azure, storage on-prem, in a colo, at AWS, you should have the same mechanisms to back it up, access it, get the data from it for data scientists, data mining, transactional data. So the whole 9 yards around storage and data should be done according to them. There's one set of APIs and one mechanism to consume it. Only time will tell how successful they are in that, but they are pushing it hard. From the newness point of view, Dell announced a project in conjunction with Nvidia.
Generative AI, pretty amazing stuff, isn't it? Generative AI is a very, very big deal.
Nvidia CEO was there talking to Jeff Clarke about that project. So they want to enable enterprises to cook up their own large language models and weave in the transactional data or the enterprise data into these models, infuse that data into these models, and make a sort of hybrid AI applications, if you will. I think that was a very interesting move. The more details will come. It was just an announcement at this point. But having said that, Dave Vellante from theCUBE and SiliconANGLE, he kind of grilled a few of the Dell execs that would you have announced this project with Nvidia if the ChatGPT was not released out there and there was no hype out there? And they said yes, because they have been working on these kind of models for a while. So I'll put the link to that talk in the show notes and so you can take a look. I will also include a link to all the major announcements made from Dell Tech World. Now let's move to MS Build, Microsoft's Build conference, which is mainly for their developers. And there was a lot of focus on Azure because developers and cloud go hand in hand these days for the last many years actually. For that reason, there was a big focus on developers. But we know where the focus is these days. AI. There were quite a few announcements around that. They actually added Bing to the ChatGPT. So on the flip side, so they went the other way around this time. So when you go to ChatGPT, you can bring in the Bing search results there. I hope ChatGPT folks or the OpenAI folks enable other search engines to be plugged into their APIs and their mechanism, so that we can include Google's results as well. But if we can't, then by doing this, Microsoft has sort of given another reason to feds or our regulators to take a look at them as a very pushy vendor which tries to stifle competition. We'll see how it goes. I have been tweeting around this for a while that Microsoft is taking a kind of posture where it can start attracting our regulators towards them like they did in 90s. So on the Microsoft Build side, they made 5 big announcements. And this book of news, they use this format of this book of news. look at this book of news, how thorough it is. And I'm listing all 5 different key announcements they have made. In the data fabric was my favorite, or my sort of most relevant, I thought, from B2B side, was the data fabric announcement. It sort of competes with Databricks and Snowflake, likes of them, and BigQuery from Google. That's a big announcement, sort of kind of hidden in MS Build, not touted as a big, huge thing. I don't know for what reason, but I think Data Fabric needed its own big announcement, independent of this event, but they kind of put it within this event to not make it a big deal because of I don't know what reason, but I think that one is a big one.
And this unification at the end of the day is what I think will fuel the next generation of AI applications.
And Satya said that himself, that it's their biggest innovative product after the SQL Server on the database side.
Working very, very hard on over multiple years, and it's finally coming together. It's perhaps the biggest launch of a data product from Microsoft since the launch of SQL Server.
Which was a huge statement, I believe. By the way, in that context, in another AI-related news, OpenAI rival Anthropic raised $450 million from Google and others, and it's launched by an ex-OpenAI exec. I tweeted about this, and you can look at that tweet, and it was a reporting done by CNBC, and they have the name of the person who started and the whole 9 yards. On a sort of amusing side, sometimes I do these kind of tweets. I said Jensen Huang has become Cardi B of tech world. Cardi B is a singer, hip hop rapper, and she appears almost on almost every stage with other rappers and other singers, and she says that like a one sentence in the whole song, and she gets sort of included in that song, if you will. And that's happening to Nvidia's CEO these days. He is appearing at all sorts of keynotes, at big events. If he can't be there, he is participating through video. So we have seen it time and again that he appears on major tech event keynotes because AI is super hot phenomena for last 4 or 5 months or so, and I think it will remain that way. On that note, I think the AI hype will wear off sooner than the cloud hype and or other technologies in the past, because the pace of change has picked up, number one. Number two is the results from these undertakings will be transparent and very stark to start with. So there's a lot of scrutiny around it, and we'll see how it goes and how enterprises will use the AI in conjunction with their transactional data, which is not conversational data, which AI is very good with. As we know that large language models are not good with math, for example, right? And or transactional data or relational databases, because the data is stored in rows and columns, and the column names are very techy sort of field names. And if we can't normalize that into natural language, how will we ask the questions against that data in natural language? So that something we have to think through that. And I think we can fix that problem. We can use the reinforced training to do that, and we can also end up pointing our business intelligence tools or reporting tools at our transactional databases in a way that they spit out these things in more like textual format, which can be fed into these large language models to augment these large language models. So the way we store data, the way we do data insight or business intelligence the traditional term BI. Those things will change with the advent of AI. Stay tuned into the intricacies of the use cases of AI in especially the large language models in enterprise space. I'll be digging deep into it, and I will bring you some information on these developments and what I think how we will proceed in future. Anyways, for sure, the generative AI is making most of the technology vendors change their playbook. That's for sure. Every vendor is weaving generative AI into their product line, into their messaging, into narratives. Some people are ahead than others, some people have better plan than others, but everybody is singing that song. Mid this week, Amazon said they will open registration for ReInvent on June 14th. So that's what Amazon said, and get ready for that. And it will happen from November 27th to December 1st, 2023 in Las Vegas. Normally, those are the dates every year. I'll be there for sure. This week in-person meetings, NY Ike, Isaac, Star CIO, digital trailblazer, book author, a good friend of mine, Isaac, was here in Bay Area, and we had a great talk for an hour and a half to 2 hours. He is a great thinker, I believe, and I always enjoy spending time with him. Also this week, Rodrigo from AWS was here in the Bay Area, grabbed drinks and dinner with him. It was a great discussion with him on the patterns of cloud consumption and how in last about 6 to 8 months or so, the posture of enterprises is changing from doing everything in cloud to re-architecting their solutions so that they are really taking advantage of cloud. So it's more of a cleanup of architecture forced by the economic conditions. We talked about that, and I believe in this, and so does he, that cloud is the way to consume infrastructure as a service, platform as a service going forward, and there's no going back. Yes, for some ISVs, for some big enterprises, it makes sense at times to have their own data centers beefed up for certain kind of workloads. By the way, on that note, there was a survey done by Sham. The survey was about when will we surpass 50% threshold in cloud versus on-prem, and I replied that a lot of people jumped into that sort of Twitter thread. There were a bunch of tweets actually going back and forth, and Crawford was there, Keith Townsend, CTO advisor, Matt Baker from Dell jumped in, Ray Wang was involved. Ray said he believes that it will never happen, that we will never cross the 50% threshold. Richard Siroter from Google jumped in. So we had a great discussion, and then later in the week on Friday, John Furrier and Dave Vellante covered that whole sort of Twitter thread in their weekly The Cube pod, which is a great podcast where Dave Vellante and John Furrier actually sat down and go over the whole week, and I just enjoy listening to them. In other cloud news, Alibaba Cloud cuts 7% of their workforce to take the company public, to do an IPO of just Alibaba Cloud separately. Nvidia kicks out of the park, and their shares rose 26% after earnings. Their earnings were stellar. The numbers are here on the screen. Their EPS was, earning per share was $1.109 versus 92 cents, which market expected. The revenue was 7.19 billion versus 6.52 billion expected, and they gave a great guidance as well. They said that there's a big line of customers, if you will. There's a great demand for their chips because everybody's jumping into the AI projects and programs. So, yep, they will be doing good for a while. Splunk earnings are there. Splunk jumped as well. Great numbers. They are one of those humble vendors, I believe, and their say to do ratio is pretty good. And though they have a lot of competition out there, and competition is closing in, but they did good. Another sort of demo floating around internet, Twitter, LinkedIn, and other places was the Adobe Photoshop AI infusion. I don't think it's a big deal. It's a generative AI. You can type a prompt and you can pick an area. You can select an area with the selection sort of tool and say, fill this with, cars or helicopter or kids playing or whatever. Not a big deal, I think, but interesting stuff is happening for creatives as well as it has been happening for developers. So AI is closing in from all different angles around all knowledge workers. Lenovo also released their earnings this week. The earnings were not that great, but they gave guidance based on confidence that they think that PC is still an important asset for enterprises, or an important device for enterprises and for individuals who are not at enterprises. And they said they are not worried about their future. So that was interesting comment. Analog devices did good, but they gave milder guidance. Splunk had a stellar first quarter, reported total revenue of $752 million, with cloud revenue growing by 30% to $419 million. The total ARR was $3.725 billion. ARR stands for annual recurring revenue, up 16% year over year. 16%, I think, is not a big number when it comes to the company which is pivoting, but still, it's pretty good in these economic conditions. I will share the SiliconANGLE article around Splunk earnings in the show notes. Another earnings story was the Workday. Their share gained 8% after hours. Another small miscellaneous news: Neuralink gets US FDA approval to conduct first in-human clinical study. Tesla is collaborating with Ford. They will share Tesla will share their charging stations where you can take your Ford car and charge there. I think it's a great win-win. Marvell shares rose 25% after semiconductor firm did a beat on their earnings. Quite a few analysts are saying that, which I agree, that they have that sort of proximity to AI, but not as much as Nvidia has. But there's a sympathy move, what they call it these days. There's a term like a sympathy move. The stock moved along with, because Nvidia moved 25%. These guys also moved, I think they reported a day or two later, and they moved 25% up as well. With that said, thanks for watching. Here is a funny, interesting clip with Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett. I think they're the funniest dudes. One is 92, one is 99. Stay in those kind of spirits. Stay happy. Crack some jokes. Have fun. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next week.
Well, anticipating a few questions on banks, I decided we should start using bank language here to describe and Charlie.